How you doing, guys, and welcome to Advanced Performance Radio. This is episode 2, and today we've got on Richard Collins, the co-owner of Physique Code, based in Myaree, a local physique and performance centre. Today we're going to be talking about all things training, how to set up your training plans, pitfalls of some people starting training plans, and all the things that we think are necessary to get good results. Hope you enjoy the podcast, guys. Please subscribe and let us know what you think. All right, so episode number 2 with the great and powerful Richard Collins. We're going to be talking about all things training today. Richard runs his own gym in Myaree with a bunch of very intelligent individuals who get good results. Going to basically give Richard a chance to introduce himself, tell us what he does, his sort of background, and how he is to be where he is right now. The floor's yours, man.
For those that don't know me, my name is Richard. I'm the co-director at the Physique Code. So we basically have a body composition business, as we like to call it. So we specialize in helping people look better. We have nutritionists, dietitians, strength coaches, and a lot of our coaches actually are able to do both, which is very, very handy. And we work with different levels of people, from people that have never been into the gym before all the way up to international professional athletes in various sports such as basketball, AFL. Obviously, we do a lot of the bodybuilding athletes. So a really wide range of athletes that we work with. But predominantly what our business does is we help people look better.
Cool, man. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is mainly training. I think what we're going to cover today is we're going to start with training for beginners, go over how to construct programs, how to understand them, the different sort of factors that make up a training program. I think lots of people get a bit confused when this comes to topic. I'm sure you can agree on that. So we're going to try and cover a bit of base knowledge, then sort of branch off a bit, cover a few other things, might touch on a few different types of advanced training, but we'll stick with the basics for now. So in your mind, what do you think are the key factors that are important in a training program? I'm sure that's what people want to know.
I think there's a lot of these. I think the number one thing, and within general population clients, I think the number one thing is people tend to overcomplicate things that they do.
Yep.
So the number one thing that we always look for is adherence. So when we look at creating programs, so if we can pull it all the way back into starting something for a beginner, obviously we want to make sure that we collect as much data as we possibly can for the athletes so that we can create a program that they're going to be adherent to. So perfect example of this would be if we have somebody that comes in that's a lawyer, for example, never been to the gym. They have a super, super busy lifestyle. Putting a program together for 2 hours of working out a day for 6 days a week is not going to be something that they're going to be able to actually adhere to. So without adherence, no program, doesn't matter how well it's written, is ever going to be successful. So what we tend to find to do is have a look at, gathering all data that we can find on, how long they have, what they're willing to dedicate, and go through everything within their goals. And then we sort of have to map out a program which may not be optimal, but it's going to be idealistic for that particular client to have a good adherence in. So I think that's honestly like the number one thing with general population programs that needs to be looked at before all and everything else. Is making sure that the program is written in a way that it's going to be very, very easy to be adherent to it.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the number one key factor that we look at when we're doing programming for general populations.
And do you find with working with people when they come in, they first, obviously you're collecting this first amount of data, do you find that many people sort of overcommit themselves to how many sessions they can realistically do when you actually break it down, it's like a lot less? Do you find that people sort of come in wanting to obviously like not impress, but like present themselves as being like, okay, I'm ready for this. I'm ready to get my ass kicked or work hard or whatever you want to say. But do you find that people will say, hey, look, I can do 5 sessions a week, when realistically it's maybe about 3?
Yeah. And that's, I think a lot of people come in super motivated, that's why they want to come in, and they're super motivated at that point to get the results. We have a tendency to look at starting at the bottom end of what they would say would be a realistic number of training sessions they'd be able to get into a week. So, somebody may say, I can get 5. And it's like, okay, cool. Do you think, is this something that you can do week to week to week? And they say, yeah, I can get anywhere from 3 to 5. Then we'll probably have a tendency to start the program at a lesser point.
Yep.
Because I want to think psychologically from creating a program, you want to make sure that while motivation is high and while they're first starting, you want them to enjoy the process of training. So being able to create a program that can create a ton of small wins, we find to be a little bit helps them with their adherence again. So for example, if we set it 5 days and 75% of the weeks they get it and 25% they don't, it may be a smarter option from a psychological side to run the sessions at 3 a week, so they're always achieving a positive result. Like they're constantly hitting their targets each week, which can help with adherence and consistency. So yeah, that does happen quite a fair bit. But the way we would combat that would be trying to start at the low end, and if they're proving they can do it every single week, then we'll increase in training days as a set of progressions.
And would you definitely say that obviously with someone just starting who's never sort of trained before, doesn't really have much training experience, or someone who's coming back after a massive layoff, would you suggest obviously also starting on that lower end to avoid someone, okay, going too fast too soon, putting in too much effort too soon when it's not necessary? Like when obviously like if like we want maximum result for minimal effective dosage sort of thing, would you say that 3 sessions a week is a good entry point rather than someone coming back and going, okay, I'm just going to get back in training and do 5 sessions a week?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there would be variations of lifestyle. Like you may find somebody doesn't have a very busy lifestyle. It could be somebody that's retired. Could be somebody even that's on a FIFO swing or whatnot, where they have a lot more spare time to train. Where we may look at it and say, okay, cool, we'll bring the amount of sessions per week up a little bit. But you're definitely right there, where we'll generally want to start as the lowest dose that we possibly can for them. Because again, the same thing as dieting, you want to be able to get the best result you can doing the bare minimum. Because if you put all your eggs in one basket, and it ends up not being sustainable, then if you can't continually sustain it, then you're not going to be able to continually progress and overload in ways down the track.
Yeah, it's almost like how like these things been perpetuated with all these like beast mode training, like training hard, and all this. People think they need to be in the gym every day doing like this huge amount of volume or training work, when realistically they haven't got a grasp of the basics to be even doing that much work.
Absolutely.
Like you see,
Absolutely.
especially when people come in and like they do the best intentions and they push it like say 110% for maybe 2 weeks, and then obviously either their diet's not in check or their recovery is not there, or they're just physically not capable of making their way through that much work that early on in their lifting career or lifting, I guess, life cycle, so to speak. But I see people that come in and they want to obviously get results quickly, and I mean it's like human nature wanting to do things in a short sprint rather than a marathon. So they'll come in and they'll train 5 days a week or whatever, and then next thing you know, they're falling off the bandwagon and they're back to square one, and then it just keeps perpetuating like that. Like you see it all the time, and I'm sure you've seen it as well. And like it's the best intentions, but sometimes, like you say, minimal effective work for maximum result. And then if the person obviously responds, adapts the way we want them to, then obviously we can push them from there. But I think way too many people think like it's either 0 or 100. There's no gradual progression. Obviously, as you know, with periodization, obviously progressing, if the person's not actually progressing effectively, say for instance, if they're coming in and they're training hard, but then they're obviously taking like 3 to 4 days to recover from that session, so then they can't train again until they hit the next one. It's all just pointless, isn't it? Like it's
It can be, yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think one of the most common issues that you'll find with general population, anyway, from my experience that I've seen, is training to failure week in, week out, and then getting to a point where you can drill into a client that they need progressive overload to progress, but instead of starting at a 90% of their full capability. They jump in and max out and do get spotted reps and negatives and things at the end of sets. And then what ends up happening is the only way they can actually progress from that is they'll have to sacrifice their technique to be able to increase the weight loads that they're lifting, and then it leads to injuries. It leads to if they don't get injured, the recovery levels aren't going to be as good. But more often than not, you will see they'll start leading to minor tears or just plateaus where they can't go any further. Yeah. So again, coming back into the periodization thing, being able to start on the minimum amount of workload that they can see a result from, and then progressively increasing whatever stimulus it might be that would be required, which would be obviously a minimum stimulus to continue to see progress, do it without injuring themselves. Being able to recover and being able to sustainably do it within their lifestyle as well, which is, I think, a big one that's overlooked.
Yeah. Would you say it's more of a male population thing, of the going to failure like frequently rather than a female thing?
I think load wise, probably yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like the amount of I would say it's probably even the amount of males I see that are, doing 35, 40 sets of chest in a workout at 110%. Also, you got to swing on the other side here is look at the total volume that some females use when they train glutes.
Yes.
And it's not uncommon to see girls training glutes 5 to 6 days a week, but not manipulating rep ranges and exercises, but just doing the same thing, day in, day out, heavy hip thrusts, light hip thrusts, lunges, abductor work with bands, and just not letting the muscle recover and training them this week. So I think it does happen both ways. I think it might be there's a slight variance in how it happens. There's always obviously outliers, but yeah, there's always it does happen on both sides. It's just a little bit more. I think it's more probably the volume versus intensity with males and females in that regard.
Males do obviously.
Versus,
males do obviously tend to try and push the volume or the weight, and I think technique obviously fails more so. But then I think females try and push the overall volume by 2 sessions a day, all that sort of stuff. And the next thing you know, their weekly volume is like 10 times higher than their male counterpart, when their quality of volume isn't the best. And as you say, exercise selection. I think a lot of females, when they start, can be guilty of not selecting the right exercises and doing a lot of fluffy stuff, like you say, all the banded stuff and the glute kickbacks and all that sort of stuff, rather than working. Sorry about that. That's right, man. I got kids. I know what it's like. But more so, rather than picking, like you see some girls in the gym training and then they're doing 6, 7 exercises and 4 sets of 15 on everything, when realistically, if intensity was there, by intensity, obviously talking about how hard they're making that exercise in each set. If it was there in say 4 exercises, then workout would be much more effective. Would you say that's true, or?
Yeah, I mean, it also depends on how well versatile what their experience level of training is, because there's actually like a bell curve sort of where you'll find that when athletes first start training, they won't be able to handle a lot of stimulus because they'll be quite sore from just starting to exercise and starting to train. And as they get stronger, and as their body awareness goes up and they're able to perform the exercises a little bit better, their volume actually is able to increase a bit and weight load. But I also feel like it gets up to a point where they get strong enough and they're able to mentally push themselves hard enough in training that they actually have to start decreasing the amount of total volume too, because their skill acquisition for the exercises becomes so good that they're able to push to a much higher intensity than they would previously when they were starting. So it actually the total volume starts lowering a little bit. So, for example, you think about it, if somebody is learning the exercise of the bench press, they may actually be able to, they'll get to a point where they'll be able to handle, for them, what they perceive to be a hard set they could get 6 or 8 of them and recover fine. However, once they start learning, how to properly push intensity during a workout, and how to, tap into a little bit of anger, or as they say, controlled insanity. You can actually push the intensity quite high, which lowers the total volume. So it's kind of like a bell curve. So it's kind of interesting. But for the majority of people, they come in and they start up at this top level, where they don't have the skill acquisition, and then all of a sudden they don't, because they don't have the skill acquisition, they can never come sort of back down to that level again, where you're saying with like the 4 to 5 effective sets, which is where they should be. But I find, they don't take the time to get the skill acquisition at the start, whether they haven't been coached properly, or again, coming back to that, all or nothing mentality of everybody wanting results last week. Um, so that they're all factors that can come into it. And I think it's, something that if people just pull back a little bit and they try to, learn, educate themselves on the movement patterns, I think in the medium to long term, they would have much, much, much better results. And they would do it in a much more sustainable, injury-free, non-taxing way. But again, like you said, everybody, comes in and they want to go 0 to 100 straight off the bat, which is definitely an issue that we see with athletes that aren't coached properly.
Yeah, and with obviously that you were saying that the skill acquisition with exercise, do you find that that's more directed towards exercise like compound movements, like being able to obviously effectively perform like a deadlift or a squat, or even a hack squat to an adequate intensity? Whereas like I'll use a hack squat as for an example, like people will use like a shallow depth, or they bounce out of the bottom of a squat or whatever else. All these sort of little things they're adding in that make the exercise easy, so they do more of it. Whereas, it's like if you go to full like ass to grass hack squat, that you're not going to be doing 6-7 sets of it. Would you say
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
more reserved to like a higher difficulty exercise?
I think that is true, but I also think the reason that potentially that could be true is because, so a lot of those compound exercises, they're a lot more technical. They're a lot more technical to learn. Whereas, you can be a little rough around the edges with form, with leg extensions, leg press, and you can still get a stimulus out of a half rep leg press. It might not be the best stimulus, but you can still get a stimulus. And I think, coming back in with these more technical exercises, I think again, it's when they are harder to learn, and I think people have a tendency, it's, within, I I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I think it is everywhere, but it's probably a little bit more Australian culture to have that sort of alpha, I can lift as much as I can sort of mentality. And then form gets sacrificed for weight. So you do definitely see it, I think, through less technical exercises and more technical exercises. But I think you're definitely correct in saying that you do see it a lot more. I think or it's more noticeable, because there's much more higher risk of injury, within those sort of deadlifts and squats, and those sort of movement patterns that again are a little bit more technical, and without technicality you just will not progress to a certain point on.
Yeah. And do you think, obviously, like when it comes to, I guess, someone performing those sort of exercises in a workout, do you believe in sort of teaching people those exercises like early on, or do you give them a chance to get a bit of steam up before you teach them sort of a deadlift or a squat, or what's your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, we sort of have progressions and regressions of exercises. So what we sort of would have a look at doing is trying to make sure that, we would teach the barbell squat once they can correctly teach a few of the other regressions to it,
Yep.
and then work their way up to it. So we would still be squatting, but we may not be barbell back squatting straight off the bat. We could be looking front foot split squats, goblet squats, any of those sort of movement patterns. And generally what we do is we have like a table of the most regressed up to, the most progressed to what they would need for their goal.
Yep.
For example, the top end of it could be a overhead squat, but if the goal is looking better, Is the overhead squat going to be beneficial to them? Probably not. What would we, which squat would be the most beneficial to them? And then we'll work them up to that level and then try to increase that specific exercise for what we see suits their goal. So we tend to, I think when you can teach those compound exercises, squatting, overhead pressing, bench pressing, rowing, deadlifts, hinge movements, so stiff leg deadlifts, things like that. I think the body just works in a much better way. And I think every other exercise in the gym gets a lot better because their body awareness is going to be a lot better. So we are quite big on teaching the compound movements. We don't teach the bench press to every single person. We don't teach the barbell squat to every single person, but we will always have levels of the progressions or regressions within people's programming just to help with their movement patterns. So, and also on top of that, so that they're structurally balanced, so that they can perform, at the best for what they need for their specific goal.
Would you say, on the topic of structural balance, would you say that most people are in need of more posterior chain work rather than the front of the body? Like when I say posterior chain, I'm obviously talking about the hamstrings, glutes, back, rear delts, for instance. Would you say that most people tend to need more structural balance in that area, obviously due to like postural issues, or like for instance, like doing too much universal chest day and then obviously not having any back or rear
happens
delt?
a lot. Yeah, so I think it depends on the person. I think, when you look at, and I think Luke Lehman had actually pointed this one out to me, is if you look at Michael Phelps, the like what has he got? Like however many gold medals in swimming, he has the worst forward neck posture and internally rotated shoulders you will ever see if you look at a picture of him. But at the same time, that's what made him an incredible swimmer. His body, that was his structure for being an incredible swimmer. So for him, that's great. But for the majority of the clientele that we deal with, and I would assume for the majority of the clientele that all trainers deal with, we all face the same issues with clients, regardless of what level athlete they are, and that's going to be sitting at a desk all day, or again, it could be training too much of the mirror muscles, and lacking a lot of the external rotators. So on the whole, I think the reason that I will say I'll agree with you and say that the external rotators and the posterior chain probably need to be trained more is you can't really overtrain the posterior chain, whereas you can overtrain yeah. So I mean, nobody, in saying that, I think anybody regardless will benefit from training more of the posterior chain, because I think that's what makes you better of an athlete. It will fix your posture. So if you're a desk worker or just general population, generally your posture will need work. It's quite common, even just from driving or anything, any of these sort of issues, everyday issues that majority of people have. The majority of clients do lack core strength. They do lack external rotation, and they do lack glute and hamstring strength. And that's just as an oversight. It's not every person. There's obviously outliers to that. But yeah, for a majority of the general population that we've dealt with, I think that's definitely a fair call to make.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll bring things right back to basics. Now, when talking about we're going to go right back to basics. When we're talking about a training program, what builds a training program? Like, what are the key concepts of it? I'm talking about like sets and reps and stuff like that. What do you think are the important factors that everyone needs to have in their training program?
Important factors?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the first thing is, and the very first thing that I think is overlooked a lot of the time, is you need to have a proper assessment. Now, when I'm talking assessment, what I would mean is have a look at your goals, have a look at exactly what you want to do, and create assessments that will benefit those specific goals. Because what you're going to find is, and this is an issue that I see quite a lot, and doing a lot of mentoring with trainers, I see pop up quite a lot, is everybody results back to the 3 sets of 10 bodybuilding type training.
Yep.
And I think that's just because that's what a lot of trainers enjoy doing, and that's what they know. So they sort of resort back to that. And to me, that's a major issue, because when I have a look at, a lot of these general population clients coming in and they say, I want to get fitter, I want to get I want to get stronger and I want to lose weight. Fantastic. Or I want to get healthier, or I want to get any of these specific goals. Every one of those has specific sets of assessment. So I think you need to make sure that you assess all of these, factors for their goals, and then all of a sudden programming looks a lot different to a bodybuilding training program. For example, if somebody wants to get fitter, you need to make sure we're measuring the right markers that we can increase. So again, if we don't do that, then the program can be wrong from the very, very start. So if we're looking at somebody coming in, a general population client, which you get a lot of people say, I want to be fitter, healthier, and lose weight.
Yeah.
We might look at it and say, cool, to get fitter, what can we measure?
Yeah.
What's a measurement that we could use for fitness? It could be any type of aerobic work, or it could be any type of, strength endurance work, or anything within those lines. Health, what's a measurement for health? It could be blood pressure, it could be resting heart rate, it could be any of these sort of things. And once we start creating programs that revolve around these specific assessments, then we can start really, broadening out what we do with programming, but actually tailor them a lot more to the client and getting their results, rather than just sitting there saying, okay, cool, you want to lose weight and be fitter? Let's go do 3 sets of 10 on the leg press, 3 sets of 10 on dumbbell chest press, 3 sets of 10 on hip thrusts, and then some, shoulders and biceps or something like that. So we can actually break down program to be a whole lot more specific when we get that initial data and we get those assessments right at the very start of the program.
Would you say that at most training, I guess, for people that do want to have, have those sort of 3 multi-pronged attack of obviously looking better, being fitter, and getting stronger, would you say that would require like way more of a hybrid training program, rather than like what you're saying with people who do program with the whole bodybuilder sort of bro split, obviously with their workouts, their intra-week workouts, so their workout makeup could be a strength day, it could be some conditioning days. Like it's not going to look like the whole Monday chest, Tuesday back, or whatever. Like, and I think it's I mean, for a perfect example of that is I had some programming done by Chad Wesley Smith recently for obviously getting better at jiu-jitsu, being, I guess, faster, stronger, performing better. And the structure of the training program that came through, I was quite impressed with. It's just a really well put together hybrid program, like multi-pronged attack. Everything sort of interlocks, everything sort of is overlapped and in synergy with each other, so that I guess you're not sort of pushing too hard with hypertrophy or strength training and then not being able to perform in another facet. Like, I think it's, and for people that can do it well, it is quite a tricky thing to get all those things to interlock to
absolutely
make someone when you're trying to work with strength and then you're trying to work with fitness and all the rest of it, you've obviously got to look at so many more facets than just going, okay, I want you training a body part a day. Here's four exercises, 4 sets of 10.
Absolutely. It's a heck of a lot more complicated, especially, and the more advanced the athlete gets, the more you need to periodize programming and look, maybe at focusing on specific strength principles or whatnot, or facets of what the athlete needs. But when we come back to the very beginner, remember that a beginner athlete potentially has 0 stimulus or very little stimulus. It is a lot easier to try. You are able to increase all facets and all principles at the same time, and then as they progress, and as obviously they progress, it's going to get harder and harder to continue to progress, and you have to start prioritizing specific areas of training with time. But if we're still coming back and talking about beginners here, we can look at it, and can somebody with no stimulus in their training end up getting a little bit stronger and a little bit fitter at the same time? Absolutely, they can. They can do that very, very comfortably because there's no stimulus. So again, coming back to that sort of minimum effective volume, it really doesn't take much to improve their current level. And then obviously, again, as they progress, then it gets tougher and tougher, and you have to sort of focus at different times on different things with periodization. But yeah, coming back to basics, I think, looking at those sort of factors and just getting away from not everybody wants to be a bodybuilder because you do. mindset and start looking at, what the client actually wants and how you actually test that compared to, just putting things in that you enjoy doing, or things that you understand or you're comfortable with. I think, that's a huge thing on fast tracking results
Yeah.
for clients. And we've sort of found once we've started, setting up different testing methods for health or for fitness or for strength or for hypertrophy, understanding how to measure each one of those, and then creating the program around it. It makes it a lot easier to program. Programs look a lot more different. They're a lot more hybrid, like you said, and we can actually get results a heck of a lot faster.
With obviously someone new starting, and obviously a lot of, I'd say a vast majority of people who don't come and see someone like ourselves, they do get adaptation, obviously, from being new, not doing it before. They could very well be doing just a bit of fluff work to get through the gym, like when coming in, doing the machines and the rest. They do get a bit of adaptation. Do you think lots of people sell themselves short with the amount of adaptation they could possibly be achieving by doing things, like, I guess, a bit misguided? They're just sort of coming in and doing work, but not really applying. Whereas I know personally, if someone came and taught me when I first started lifting, like, well, how many years ago is it now? Like 15 years ago, I guarantee I could have progressed a lot quicker, and it wouldn't have taken me years to put on any muscle, because I would have been obviously putting the work in a much more efficient way. Like I've
I
seen.
think we're all in that. I
Yeah.
think every
Yeah.
single is in that. I think if you're not in that boat, then you need to go back and keep learning
Yeah.
more and more. Like every single person that is advanced in their lifting career is in that boat now, saying, I wish I knew that 6 months ago. I wish I knew that 5 years ago. I
Yeah.
wish I knew that 10 years.
And it's
So
the glory of hindsight.
yeah, yeah. But then it makes you frustrated when you look back on it. So,
Yeah.
but But yeah, you will always get like newbie adaptation. It's just literally the same thing as coming down before, is when you have zero stimulus, you have zero minimum effective volume, and you can add in pretty much anything and see a result. And as long as that ball, you can get stronger by running. You can get fitter by doing 5 rep bench presses when you have a zero stimulus. Will that last a long time? Probably not. Will it be able to continue progressing doing that? Definitely not. But you will get that adaptation, and I think it's almost like it sucks a little bit, because you'll get a lot of people that will progress slightly with that method, get comfortable and confident with it, and then they just don't want to change ever again because
They're
they
doing
had
the
progress.
same. You're doing the same
Yeah,
workout for like 4 years straight without any changes to sort of
yeah,
rep range and things like that. And it's,
absolutely,
I
yeah,
think
absolutely.
like, yes, for an example, I had a guy, it was a couple of years ago, who had never been to the gym before. I wouldn't say he was a skinny guy, like physical job, but he progressed from first day of deadlifts to like 10 kilos aside to like, so 40 in total, to 12 weeks later pulling 150 off the floor. And it's like, obviously that was done with like obviously a lot more thought out programming, strength program, like powerlifting programming. But you look back on it, it's like, shit, man, I wish I could add 110 kilos to my bench in 12 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And it's funny you say that, because I actually had a girl today come through, and she about 8 weeks ago had said the best deadlift or 6 weeks ago, the best deadlift she had ever done was like 115 kilos for 5 reps. And but bear in mind, this girl, she's trained. And she's relatively trained. Technical was quite good. A couple little adjustments, but we actually had pushed her each week, and we've now got her up to, what do we do today? We did 100 for 22 reps, and then we did 110 for 14.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and again, and there's so many variables to it, exercise technique, going back to what we were talking about at the start of the podcast on how important exercise technique is for lifting progressions, and how much further it's going to be able to push you. That stuff becomes vital, and especially, the further you want to take it, the better it has to be, because, you have a look at any power lifter, for example, that can squat 300 kilos, and none of those guys can squat 300 kilos in bad form because the bar would just kill you.
Yeah.
Um, so you have to, if you're up there hitting, 250 to 400 kilo squats, you're doing something right. Because for you to be able to move that weight, and it works and vice versa. Whereas if you don't dial in exercise technique, um, you'll find yourself, you'll be unable to progress, and if you do, you'll get injured.
With, I guess, with that one, like jumping that forwards to like someone, I guess, who's been lifting for a while, would you say that there are some people, like, and I've seen it firsthand, is that they've been lifting for a while. They come in and they're like, oh, I mean, like they're just progressing, like plodding along sort of thing. And then you tweak sort of like one minute thing, like, I don't know, maybe they're not staying tight through the core's breaking through a squat or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden they've added another 20 kilos to their lift. Like, obviously there's always room for refinement. I mean, I'm sure both of us could go see someone like Sebastian Oreb or, I mean, whoever else, and have our technique refined, even though we've both been lifting for like half our lives.
Yeah.
There's never, I guess, a ceiling. There's always room for improvement. Like, no matter how long you've been doing it for, there's always someone that's got like a more, I guess, fine-tuned eye to what you're doing.
Absolutely.
I think a lot.
And to go with that as well, I think there's a lot of the time, a really big thing is how you cue it, and I
Yeah,
think maybe somebody can try to teach you, two different people can try to teach you the exact same things, but one person cues it in a way that's not necessarily better, but it's just something that clicks with you. And, that can create a lot of progression.
with that,
By just
definitely, I think Seb's probably one of the best that I've found at
is 100.
simplifying big lifts so that anyone can understand it. Like, it's very simple. And I found when I did his seminar, how many years ago it was now, that like I'd never really front squatted much. Not really that I was avoiding. I just never found a need for it. Did his seminar and he just simplified things to the point. It was like, wow, that's so much easier. Same with deads as well. I think, like, I mean, another guy.
His technique is I found quite helpful. The four cues of, grabbing the bar where your hands are lowest to the ground, push the knees into the hands,
Yeah,
pull your shoulder blades down into your back pockets, and leg press the floor.
yeah, yeah, very true. And it is, I think, another person that I'm not sure if you've seen. Have you seen Chris Duffin's video on squats?
Yeah.
That's probably the most in-depth, accurate, and helpful squat technique video I've ever watched.
Okay.
Super detailed. Like, I guess it's more for someone who's really trying to make the exercise that performance exercise, but the way he breaks it down is just, and for a guy who squats 400 with no shoes on, like, pretty
He knows a couple things.
yeah. So
He knows a couple things. There's no doubt about it if
yeah,
he's, squatting those kind of numbers.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's all those factors they become huge, and I think again, like you were saying, when you bring all this back down to when we look at it from a top of the pyramid kind of thing, and you realize and say, okay, cool. I wish I knew, if my technique was better when I first started and I slowed down progression a little bit. Um, I would have been a much better lifter, or if I had not tried to just max out on every single session. And when we look at those things that we say we wish we knew now, these are all good things for coaches to try to implement within their training programs with beginners, and not get into that habit of all right, let's just make this person feel tired and bust them up.
Yeah,
What's an exercise do on that? And let's go back to try to educate them, because for us it's there's no better way for us for our job than is to be able to teach these things and see these clients in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, off in their specific sport doing exactly, with perfect technique. And, they can look back on it and say, look, I'm glad that I had somebody, pull me back on a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing all these other people go through, and teach me the right way to do things, and slow me down, and, make sure I focus on exercise technique, make sure I focus on structural balance, make sure I strengthen weak points, and when we look at it that way, that's where, as coaches, they're all the things that we want to focus on with these general population clients that have never come into the gym before is, making sure that they're structurally balanced, making sure that they're able to perform regressed exercises of the deadlift and the squat before they even look at the barbell or the squat or bench press or any of those things. And I think that's what makes the job fun for us as well. Is we can do that and we can build on it, and it's motivating for them at the same time because they get um, they're going to progress so fast as a new client.
Yeah.
And and that's something probably we took for granted at the start. But when we can actually come through a program and collect data for them and say, hey, look, you were front foot split squatting, you couldn't even do it in the first week, and now have a look at your technique, and now you got 4 kilo dumbbells in your hand. Like how crazy is that progression?
Yeah.
And then keep them motivated and keep them adherent. And it's important to make sure that we do all of those things which are going to make a successful program, because I think when one of those facets starts to fail, people will have a tendency to go, oh, this isn't working, this is boring for me. I want to be able to do this. I want results right now. Such and such trainer is over there, doing boxing and making them really tired. I'm going to go do that instead. Which is, obviously what we don't want to have with clientele, because we want to be able to educate them. We want to be able to progress them week by week. So, coming back and looking at these beginner programs, these are all the really important factors that we need to make sure we can look at and make sure that the client understands as well.
Do you think that a lot of people who are beginners who haven't really lifted before, regardless of sort of whether they're physical in a sport or just general population or growth, that they assume that it's going to be hard for them to learn these, like especially like deadlifts and squats and like movements like that? They make this assumption that it's going to be hard for us to teach them and it's going to be hard for them to learn. When I think it's quite the opposite. When someone's got a really clean slate, it can often be easy to teach them. Like it's.
Oh yeah, you got no bad habits to break. 100% right.
For instance, as a perfect example, I had a girl come through who was a sprinter. She's only 16. And she basically said, look, my coach wants me to do some strength training to get better at sprinting, that sort of thing. Had been quite active, but never lifted weights before in her life. And in the first session, nailed 100 kilo squat for 2 reps, ass to grass, perfect technique. No,
at 16 years old.
At 16 years old, and like, don't get me wrong, like she had like pretty decent muscular development from obviously sprinting. Like she was.
This is a female.
Female, yeah. So I thought there was someone with a video camera hiding somewhere, like setting me up, and like we worked with like an empty bar, bang, nails the technique, put 10 kilos either side, bang, nails about 10 reps with perfect technique. Up to 20 kilos side, then up to 30 kilo either side, so an 80 kilo squat. And then you get the comment like, oh, am I doing it right? And it's like, you're just shaking your head like, fuck, man, like you can like squat more than most guys in the gym and you barely even squatted before.
But again, even though they haven't been in the gym, you got to, you want to have a look at the muscles that they use and the muscle actions that they have with sprinting compared to squatting. And they are actually, a lot of the muscles that are being trained are quite similar.
Exactly.
And actually quite similar in movement patterns as well. So, I mean, 100, that's a crazy number, but those people are going to be much easier to teach than somebody that spent their whole life sitting on a chair doing,
but in the same context as well. Like this was like maybe even 2 weeks apart from each other. I had another guy come in who had been IT in the Navy for 20 plus years and had never done any physical activity outside of the Navy selection process. And same thing again, showed him how to squat like once, showed him the basic general gist of it, broke things down so they're fairly simple for him to understand, and he nails perfect technique with like 20 kilos at the side. I'm like, it took me way longer than this to learn how to squat properly, but it is, I think. But say, for instance, you've got 40-year-old Joe Bloggs who's been squatting in the Smith machine for most of his life because he's got bad knees. And he wants to finally learn how to squat properly, and he's got all these bad habits and bad postural awareness, and his biomechanics of his body suck, and he's quad dominant because he's never used his glutes or hammies in a squat before. Those people become really hard to coach, like really hard to retrain. Not to say that it's impossible, but it just becomes quite difficult to wipe out all those bad movement patterns. And I would say lots of bodybuilders are guilty of that. Like that, 1980s, 1990s, early 2000s bodybuilders that still squat with their knees behind their toes. You know what I mean? Like it does get quite hard to coach those people because they're so set in their ways of like, okay, like I got to do everything. It's like when I'm doing side raises, I've got to swing so these dumbbells nearly go into orbit, and like it does get quite hard. I think lots of beginners assume that's going to be hard for them to learn. And I spoke to a lady today that I was coaching, and she was looking at I was trying to teach her how to deadlift, and because it was she was having some issues with back strength, like core strength. So we worked on deadlifts, and like I only did them from blocks just to get her sort of moving into it. And she's like, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to get this. It's going to be too hard." And I see people doing these exercises, and they all look so like confident in them and all the rest of it. So I can pretty much guarantee you that half the people you're looking at aren't doing it properly. So we'll give it a crack, and then we'll go from there. And within like a couple of minutes, she's got the general gist of how to hinge at her hips and that sort of thing moving well. And I'm like, look, it's actually quite easy to teach you guys. And I think especially squats and deadlifts, they do become quite an intimidating exercise for Gen Pop, especially people first starting. It looks like a super complicated, difficult exercise. So they're like, nah, I'm not going to do it. It's just too hard. And the next thing you know, they're just sitting on machines doing 4 sets of 10 for the rest of their life because they assume that it's going to be very difficult for them to learn. When I guess, like you say, perfect example when you have like obviously progression and regression methods. Like for instance, I had a lady recently who had both of her hips replaced at the same time and has a bulged disc as well in her lower back. So like pretty extensive lower body trauma. And like with us progressing, it was basically like squatting with a band wrapped around a pole so she can essentially like pull herself up and out of the squat because the strength is not there. And now we've progressed to her being able to hack squat with full range of motion and not have any issues in the strength levels all there. Like it's exactly like you say, using those progression and regression methods. I'm not sure if some people sort of know what we're talking about. Like with that term, it's obviously us finding ways to introduce you to a movement, get a grasp of the movement, and then obviously we can progress and adapt, and then obviously move on to, like you say, like a barbell back squat or a full deadlift or whatever else. But I think lots of people avoid the most beneficial exercises in the gym for fear that they can't do them. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I think they're also the most technical exercises a lot of the time. So I think, again, coming back to that point that you were saying, people don't do it. They may be intimidated. They don't want to look stupid in the gym trying it, or again, it's a technically hard exercise to do. So people avoid it rather than be coached to learn how to do it. In saying that, though, if we look at squatting and things like that, we don't, there's not, depending on the client's goals, there's not necessarily a necessity to perform a lot of those exercises. It's definitely better. You should do it, but it's not a necessity for them to do it. But again, coming back and looking at a lot of these beginners, and I think it's just a matter of not understanding. They look around and they know here's squats, but they don't understand that if they can't perform that, there's a way you can regress that into like a goblet squat or a front foot split squat, or any football squats on the wall or anything like that. And there are ways that you can regress it to get better. I hate that term, mind muscle connection, or just body awareness on how to teach the body to move in a certain movement pattern. And then once you've mastered that, go up to a slightly tougher squat variation. And then just, if you just only move up the squat progressions as you've mastered each one, you should get to the barbell squat and be very comfortable with it.
Yep.
But again, I think it can be an education. It can be, people just look straight for the harder exercises and then try to go do it. And if they can't do it, like you said, they'll just avoid it and go do, what's comfortable.
Yeah.
But again, is it because they're scared of doing it, or is it because they're not educated to do it? It could be. I think that's what keeps us in business, is being able to help educate these people from okay, this is and then coming back to again what we were saying with the program is this is our assessment. So this is the data we need to improve. So we know where we are. Now we need to work out how to get to where we need to be. And if your goal is to squat, We know you can perform a squat with the football on your back up against the wall. So we know what the next progression is going to have to be. And then we're going to continually master each exercise until we get there.
And would you, I guess when we come back to like obviously that fear, that being scared of certain exercises, that then also just completely stems off of just a lack of education. Whereas if we can educate someone, you can show them there's no need to sort of fear those sort of movements because, like, I guess with us delivering that education, they don't need to be this scared them because then obviously they understand. You know, it's like the old saying, people are always scared of what they don't understand. And then obviously that's essentially our job is to teach that understanding. But
yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so back to, I guess, go back to basics again. But so I think the most common things people see with a training plan, they see like when they're given one, like I see so many people come through the gym where they've got like a plan that's printed out from like, you know what I mean, like bodybuilding.com or a fitness page, or they've got like Ashy Bio's new bikini body challenge plan or whatever else they've got. And like the most common things we see like are like obviously your sets and your reps and like how much weight or like the exercise selection. What's people's best? I know people say like certain rep ranges, or it's been said for like amongst like bodybuilding circles for years that there's certain rep ranges that belong to certain types of training. What do you think if someone's starting with like basic general plan to like, I guess, improve upon strength and general body composition, looking better, what would you say is a good starting point? I know that I tend to fall towards the, I guess, the push-pull leg day sort of split for beginners, obviously doing 3 times a week. They're trying to improve body composition. So that term essentially is the push-pull leg day. So push requires, I guess, pushing movement. So chest, shoulders, and tries. Pull is obviously our back, rear delts and bis. And then obviously legs is on its own. And I think that sort of is a good entry because it's not doing like a whole body part a day or not doing like full body workouts, which I don't really like. And it allows people to sort of get a group of, say, like 1 or 2 exercises per body part in that split. Like, say, for instance, if we're talking about push, so that maybe like a dumbbell shoulder press, dumbbell bench press, and then like a tricep dip, and then obviously a few other ones. Would you say that's a good starting point? Like, where do you usually start people?
Yeah, I mean, again, coming back to it's a hard one because it comes back to the data collection where we look at it and say, okay, realistically, how many days are you eligible to train? So if we're looking at 1 day, obviously it's going to be full body.
Yep.
You know, and if we look at 2 days, I still probably would go with a full body or anterior, posterior, so the front side of the body 1 day, the back side of the body the other, or an upper and a lower. You know, whereas if it's 3 days, we could look anywhere from 3 full body days to, you know, the push pull legs, which is something that we sort of look at using. But again, you know, it comes down to as well is what the specific client's actual goal is going to come down to. Because, you know, if somebody comes in and saying, I want to look better, we can break that down even more. What areas of your body are you unhappy with? And it could be, you know, a male saying, I want to look better at the beach. Cool. Well, we're going to try to put majority of our volume through the upper body, and still put weight loads through the legs as well, obviously. But the majority of the volume will be dedicated to that person's goal. Whereas you could look at a female that wants to get her stomach and her glutes better. You know, we may look at putting a little bit more volume. We could end up looking at, you know, using two lower body days to 1 upper body day because that would suit her goal a little bit better. So again, I think the training splits always come down to, you know, coming down and breaking down the actual goal and saying, all right, what's the needs analysis for this person? And then having a look at the program within that structure. But, you know, when you do look, if we're looking at, just say for sake of somebody that wants to look better and wants to train 3 days a week, you know, push pull legs is going to cover the entire body equally. You know, and then within that, you can have a look at, you know, if the focus is more chest, then obviously you can put more of the pushing day volume towards chest, and a little bit less towards other things. And, you know, so there's benefits and there's pros and cons to every single training split. But, you know, I think it comes down to really identifying what you or that client wants. Because I know, for example, With my own personal training, um, I tend to veer a little bit more towards full body workouts,
Yep.
just because, and just for the sake, literally for the sake of, is I'm trying to maximize calorie expenditure at the moment, and I know, um, even just by looking at data, that my calorie expenditure is much higher on full body workouts using compound movements and adding conditioning at the end of each workout. So when we do, but for me, looking at somebody that wants to look better at the beach, the goals are going to be completely different. The split's going to be completely different.
Yep.
But again, splitting up 3 to 4, 4 days, um, you just have to identify, again, you just have to identify the goal that they actually want, or that you actually want, and um, make the best program based around, that set of goals and data that you're going to have for them. And again, it could be that the goal is to look exact, to have evenly train the entire body, and get a good understanding of some compound and some isolation exercises. If that's the case, then push pull legs is going to be an absolutely perfect setup. Could be somebody that's powerlifting that wants some better body composition. Push pull legs, absolutely 100% perfect for that. So again, training splits are always going to be varied, and I think there's a lot of people that get too bogged down with the perfect split, and again, coming back to how you were saying, like the bodybuilders over the 5 days that do chest, back, legs, shoulders, and then arms on a Friday before they go out to the pub. And that's a super, super, super common split. Is it the best split? Maybe for somebody, but probably not for everybody. So yeah, so I think the key factor with programming to the training splits is just identifying, again, like we said, that adherence at the starting point, making sure that it's something that's going to motivate them to want to do it and to want to be better at it, and then have a look at the needs analysis of what the client actually, or yourself actually, wants. Just
Yeah.
kind of focus the majority of energy around that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And I guess for someone that's trying to create a plan or trying to get a rough idea of what they should be doing, like, would you, obviously for us, we know what we're trying to assess. Like when someone comes to us and they say, look, I want to get better at rugby, I want to be stronger, I want to be faster, or someone's like, I want to lose weight and look a bit better. I guess we know what to look for. How would you say would be the best plan of attack for someone who, I guess, doesn't know what to look for, or someone who, I mean, they're wanting to start, they want to do some, some basic training? What would be your recommendations for that? Like, obviously, I would, as a general rule, prioritize compound lifts.
Absolutely.
For anyone in
Is
general.
this somebody that's is this somebody?
Well, that meant so you just cut out.
Is this a brand new client, like somebody that's never
Yeah,
been in the
yeah.
gym
I
before?
think it's like someone completely new, man. Like, I guess for someone who,
The number one best plan of action would be, if they are at Gold's Gym Rockingham, to go and see you. And it doesn't matter where you go or what gym you're at, is to find somebody and that is experienced in it. Because I think what a lot of people don't realize is if you're trying to look for lifestyle changes and better results over the long period of time, um, it's a very small expense to pay to learn a great deal that will save you many, many years of uninjured training um,
yeah,
and and time for progression. If you're not willing to do that, do a lot of research, I think, because again, it's one of those things that it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of experience to be able to master. Um, and I think if I was just to tell somebody, what it's your first time going into the gym, I would say try to find exercises that aren't super technical
yeah,
and get comfortable with them. And then try to make sure you're training the entire body, so you're not neglecting muscle groups. And then very slowly progress, either reps, weight, or sets and try to progress them, not every week. I think that we do a plateau too fast, and I think, when you are brand new, a new training stimulus will work for a very good period of time. So it could be progressing every 3 to 4 weeks or only when you're comfortable to do it. And then continually progress until you can't. And then um, either add in a couple other exercises or again come back and work out that you haven't progressed anymore and then pay somebody to help you get better.
Yeah, and I think both of us, obviously, we've both invested money and time in learning from people that are much smarter than us. In learning more, as we said before, you can never sort of get complacent with like how you lift or how much you know. And like I know that I've had clients come through in the past who have been quote unquote bodybuilder style trainers for many years, and then you show them some cool shit, and it completely blows their mind, and then a whole different kettle of fish. And I'm sure we've both had that happen to us and working with
Yeah.
certain people. I know, looking at sort
We
of like,
still got, I'm doing two courses at the moment.
yeah, and that's the thing. I think there's like,
So,
I mean, it goes back to the saying like of obviously knowledge is power when it's applied, and there's so much to learn in the field of programming. I think many people just want to, like what you were saying before, we want to try and do the minimal amount of work for the maximum amount of results. And I think a lot of people, instead of sort of investing so much energy in just trying to like destroy themselves, could invest that energy in reading a book or doing a bit of research and saving themselves a lot of time, a lot of anguish. And I'm sure like a lot of people have ended up having injuries earlier on, like fried front delts and sore lower back and all the other bits and pieces that come with not
absolutely.
training properly. And I guess I see so many like guys and girls who will get the point where they've trained for like 14 weeks straight with no sort of periodization. They're just trying to push. And then, like obviously, as we say, they hit a wall, so to speak, and then they can start obviously having like negative effects of obviously not getting stronger or regressing, getting weaker, or injuries, or no sleep, or not recovering properly. And then obviously, then that goes off into a completely different direction of obviously the nutrition that comes with it. It doesn't go hand in hand sometimes. Like I'm sure every PT has seen this. We get people that come into the gym who are trying to do huge amounts of work and just not having the fuel to like fund that work. So I think it's that whole saying work smarter, not harder is crucial to people. And like I see, and I'm sure every PT, I'm sure you've seen it, people that come in, and don't get me wrong, they're working their ass off, like they're giving it 110%. But as you said before, realistically, if it went back to 70% and that 70% was of a much better quality of work, their overall yield of results would be, I guess, much better.
Their fatigue is not going to go up so much. Their risk of injury is not going to go up so much. And, they'll be able to progress week to week. Calorie expenditure will go higher, and it's much more, it's all done in a way where it can be tracked much easier and where you can get results with a much easier stress on the body, I should say.
Yeah. One thing I will ask is before we sort of get towards the end of this, I was asked one question by one of my clients. He wants to know about active recovery, like what sort of your views are on active recovery, because he, for instance, does jiu-jitsu and like martial arts, and then does obviously conditioning work as well. And I think a lot of people, especially people who are really enjoying training, get to a point where they don't want to have days off. I mean, the gym is not just them trying to get results. It's obviously a mental thing, and they both enjoy it, and it makes them feel good. So what are your views on like active rest days? Do you, I know that with some of my clients, if they do want to have an active rest day, I say like maybe like a swim or something like that, just to keep sort of, keep them, I guess, entertained or like, I guess, I don't know, complacent for the day, rather than them going and doing another whole full workout and just not allowing rest. I think people don't emphasize rest in training enough. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So with anything with recovery, obviously, you just want to make sure that it's not intense. majority of my clients on anything recovery wise will generally, I'll tell them to go for a walk. The reason I tell them to go for a walk is because I can still keep their output. And again, this is with body composition clients, is I can get them to keep their output up a little bit higher. So we can minimize any negative effects from not training from the energy balance point of view, but also just to do exercise that's not going to create any fatigue whatsoever to them.
Yeah.
Also, just psychologically, it's good to get them to go out and do something because generally, the amount of times you find people that they just hate sitting around. If you're like me, I'm an all or nothing person, so I have to be doing something at all times. I can't just have a complete day off because I'll start feeling like shit, and my motivation actually goes down. So, for that from that point of view, majority of my clients, I usually just have days of walking, days of doing anything de-stressing. Could be a potential increase in calories to help with recovery, but also, focusing on sleep, focusing on making sure anything without the day is not causing stress on the body at all. And that's about, honestly, like I'm probably the worst person in the world to ask about that. But with my clients, that's what I've done, and I've always had great success with it. So that's what I continue to do.
Yeah, I think one of the other options that I do opt for as well with clients that is I tell them to go and do something fun that they enjoy. Like I guess that's one of the things like picked up from our friend Luke Lehman is to go do something that's not gym related, but still like I guess active that keeps them I guess doing something fun. Whereas it's like I know it, when you're in like a fairly decent like dieting phase or like a pretty hardcore training program, like you have a bit of fun doing it, but sometimes it's pretty grueling. So I think obviously that step away from doing just gym work can be beneficial for long-term adherence, but also just not frying your body out.
5 years ago, I would have said I'd go play basketball to do my active recovery. But as I recently found out, that is a little bit fatiguing on the body still. I'm these days, as I'm getting a bit older, I'm pulling up sore from it. So
Yeah.
I've had to pull it back, and I'm going for walks down on the river and listening to podcasts or music or something along those lines, and just trying to increase my total output via steps rather than something a little bit more vigorous activity wise. So, but again, like I said, man, I'm the worst person in the world to ask about this. Literally, that's all I've generally used with clients and myself, and I found it's been quite successful. So I've just sort of continued to run with it, and that's probably the best answer I got for you.
Too easy, man. Well, before we finish, I'll give you the chance. Like, if anyone wants to sort of find you or find your team, I know there's quite a few of you floating around now. So, where's the best place to find you?
So you can find us on Instagram. It's at Physique Code, nice and simple. If you have any questions directly related to me, it will be Richard_Physique Code, or Physique Code on Facebook. So nice and simple to remember. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, any queries or anything like that, just flick over a message, and usually we'll get back to people quite quickly on that.
Too easy, man. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it.
Too easy, man.
All right.
See ya.